London has always been more than a city. It is an idea, a symbol, a dream shared by millions of people around the world. For first-time visitors, everything seems to pulse with a particular kind of energy that mixes tradition and modernity, the imperial past and the multicultural present, the narrow streets and glass skyscrapers, the sound of red buses mixed with dozens of different languages on the same corner. But behind this vibrant and cosmopolitan look, an unsettling feeling grows among those who live there. That living in London is becoming not only difficult, but almost impossible. It's a curious paradox. The British capital is one of the richest and most influential cities on the planet, but at the same time, it is also one of the most challenging to sustain. The cost of living, the price of housing, transportation, the fast pace, everything seems to conspire to push ordinary people out. The question is inevitable. How did a city that was once the heart of the world become so hostile to its own inhabitants? The story begins with housing. In London, the dream of owning a home turned into an uneven race. In recent decades, average home prices have risen much faster than wages. Buying a property is for many a distant fantasy, and renting is no longer a relief either. Rents consume half or more of many people's monthly income. London's property market has become a global speculation ground, with international investors buying apartments as a way to store wealth, not to live in them. Many of these properties sit empty for much of the year as thousands of Londoners face queues for affordable housing or live in temporary accommodation. It is a city with unoccupied luxury apartments, and at the same time, with whole families living in rooms rented by the week, sharing a kitchen and bathroom with strangers. The imbalance is deep and visible. The housing crisis is not new, but it has worsened over time. Population growth, coupled with the lack of large-scale social housing construction policies, meant that supply did not keep up with demand. Available land is limited, planning regulations are strict, and the approval process for new projects is slow and expensive. The result is a combination of scarcity and inflation that hits everyone, from young professionals sharing apartments to entire families driven to the far suburbs. And the farther one lives, the more expensive and time-consuming transportation becomes. Transportation, by the way, is another symptom of the problem. The London system is one of the most extensive and efficient in the world, but also one of the most expensive. Riding the tube every day can cost the equivalent of hundreds of pounds a month, and even the cheapest option, the bus, has fares that weigh on the pocket of those who live on the edge. For those living on the edges of the city, commuting expenses can be almost as high as rent. This creates a sense of entrapment. You have to live far away to pay less, but living far away means spending more time and money to get to work. London, which has always been seen as a city of opportunity, now charges a high price for those opportunities. The cost of everyday living, food, energy, transportation, rent, has grown so much that many essential workers, such as teachers, nurses, bus drivers, and basic service workers, are leaving the city. They simply can no longer afford to live where they work. This silent exodus has serious consequences. When the people who keep the city running fail to stay in it, the social fabric begins to unravel. Schools face teacher shortages, hospitals struggle to retain nurses, restaurants and cafes struggle to hire staff. It's a city that depends on a workforce that can no longer afford to live there. Part of the problem comes from economic policies and urban decisions that have accumulated over the decades. Since the 1980s, London has undergone an intense process of deregulation and privatization. The real estate market was encouraged as an engine of economic growth, but without a balance between private investment and public interest. The result was a city that valued itself too much, but unevenly. While some areas have turned into luxury enclaves, others have been left behind, with poor infrastructure and overwhelmed services. Gentrification, that process in which once popular neighborhoods become expensive and inaccessible, has become the rule, not the exception. Places like Brixton, Hackney, and Camden, once strongholds of artists, immigrants, and middle-class youth, have become expensive neighborhoods with minimalist cafes, high rents, and an increasingly homogeneous atmosphere. The diversity that was part of the soul of London is being pushed away, and this changes not only the economic profile of the city, but also its cultural character. Because London has always been made of mixtures, of accents, of cuisines, of traditions that live side by side. When the cost of living drives ordinary people away, the city loses that human texture. And there is another element that aggravates everything: inequality. London is simultaneously one of the wealthiest and most unequal cities in Europe. While billionaires buy mansions in Kensington or apartments overlooking the Thames, there are thousands of people sleeping on the streets or in shelters. In recent years, the number of Londoners living in temporary accommodation or without housing is at record levels. It is a reality that is difficult to reconcile with the brightness of the city lights or the tourist postcards. This inequality is also reflected in the way urban space is used. The central areas, with their offices and luxury shops, are often almost empty at night, while the densely populated peripheries face transport overload and lack of services. Urban planning seems to serve global capital more than local people. The market dictates where and how one builds, and short-term interests often override social needs. It's not just an economic problem, it's also a psychological and cultural one. Many Londoners speak of a feeling of exhaustion, of always being on the run for something, for a better job, for a cheaper rent, for a little free time. Everyday life is marked by constant pressure, and even small luxuries, such as going out to dinner or taking a walk, become carefully calculated. What was once a city full of possibilities begins to look like a city of survival. This tension is expressed in a subtle form of withdrawal. People spend more time at home, socialize less, work more, and it erodes the sense of community that has always been a strength of London. However, the problem is not inevitable. There are those who argue that London is going through a transition and that this is the price of global success. Indeed, cities that concentrate economic and cultural power face similar challenges. New York, San Francisco, Paris, Tokyo all have problems with cost of living, inequality, and a lack of affordable housing. But the London case has a peculiarity. It sharply exposes the conflict between a city made for the world and a city made for those who live in it. In recent years, some measures have been tried. Incentives for building affordable housing, limits on short-term rentals, projects to revitalize outlying neighborhoods, but they are still timid in the face of the magnitude of the problem. Solving London's crisis would require more than one-off policies. It would require rethinking the very model of a city, for whom it exists, who has the right to remain, and what kind of life it offers. It would require recognizing that the value of London is not just in its banks, museums, and universities, but in the people who inhabit it. The workers who drive the buses, the immigrants who open small restaurants, the artists who create on the margins, the families who build their stories in ordinary neighborhoods. They're the ones who keep the soul of the city alive. When these people are expelled, London becomes less London. Still, there is resistance. In several neighborhoods, community movements are fighting against evictions, against aggressive gentrification projects, for more humane housing policies. Young architects propose new models of collective housing. Economists advocate limits on the speculative market. Local groups push for cheaper transportation and strengthen public services. There is a growing perception that the city needs to be rescued from purely financial logics, that it needs to return to being a place of belonging, not just passing through. The challenge is that all of this takes time and political courage. London, like so many 21st century metropolises, is on the edge between being a living city and a showcase of itself. Her story shows that she always knew how to reinvent herself. She survived fires, wars, economic crises, deep social transformations. Perhaps this current crisis is yet another test of endurance, a chance to rediscover what it really means to live in community. Because living in a city is not just paying to be in it. It is to feel that you belong to a space, that you contribute to something greater, that you have a future there. And deep down, that's the question many Londoners are asking themselves. Is there still a future here? Perhaps the first step is to recognize that the city will only stay alive if it remains human. And humanity, in London, has always been the most worth protecting.